Hi, I am Fury of the Film Fan. Man, I have not said that intro in quite a while. It feels weird. See, I used to review movies way back when YouTube first started. I have done this same introduction a few times over the years, briefly coming back onto the platform here and there to focus on a particular topic or issue. Those only looking for the review for Chris Stuckman's Shelby OAKS can use the timestamp below and jump straight to that. You can do that now if you want. But before you do, understand this. You'll be missing out on something specific. But if you're only looking for the review, and just a review, please by all means proceed. Because the rest of this video is not a review. It's a lesson disguised as one. Now, some may not find value in this part, which is fine. You can continue on to the actual review, but understand that what comes before the review carries a message that adds context and weight to that review. Now, I can already see the comments. Again, I've been here before. Oh my god, bro, just let it go. It's been so long. You're a fucking loser. Old me would love to fight one-on-one with these guys. But I don't care anymore. I don't. I don't care about those people. You mean less than nothing to me. You don't know what the fuck I've been through. Alright? This video is for everyone else. I won't even look at your comment. For the rest that remain, there's a lot of context that is going to add to that review. You may not want that. Or it just may not be the thing that you want right now. But if you're still here, we'll start from the beginning. This persona of Fury of the Film Fan, it was created with the idea of bringing movie reviews back to the people. That was my tagline. I started the channel because I felt critics were out of touch with the general public. I felt that these critics didn't relate with what the people were looking for in film. So my reviews focused on what the movies meant for the individual watching it. I focused on what they tried to accomplish and for who, rather than the technical aspects so many professional critics would focus on. And I did my reviews just like this, without showing my face, because I wanted people to focus more on the message rather than the person. I never wanted to be an online personality. To be honest, there were some insecurities there. Okay, a lot of insecurities. Raised a Jehovah's Witness under a form of control many can't even begin to imagine. You know, funny thing about control, even when you find yourself out of it, it still finds a way to follow you. And I didn't like who I was, so I never showed myself. You know, the world can be cruel, and I already had my fill of bullies growing up. My fill. I thought I didn't care what people thought of me at the time, but I did. I was very insecure. And I thought that I was hiding my identity because I was worried about the people around me in that religion. But the truth of the matter is that I was worried about what people would think about me. I have lived. I have been through a lot. I have been through near-death experiences. I have lost people that I've loved. I have been in pain that could not be described. And I've grown. And who I am now is far different than whatever I was before. And that's something that I hope everybody can go through. A process of growth, a learning journey, because that's what this is all about. And I can share that the past 18 years, it has been a journey. And now, who I am? Yeah, this is Fury of the Film Fan. But who was Fury before? What was he trying to do? What was he trying to be? On the surface, it looked like I was just this ambitious guy who wanted to build a YouTube channel so I could make money online and review movies. But really, I just wanted to fight. Fury of the Film Fan had a different side to him. And the other side of this personality was the side that just couldn't stay quiet. And when I saw something wrong, Yeah, I'd get a little extra about it. I couldn't help but focus on things that many people didn't see, or worse yet, care to acknowledge. If I saw things that was affecting people in a negative way, in some form or another, I acted. I couldn't help but act. And I wouldn't stop until I got the result that I was looking for. Yeah, some people called me crazy, but sometimes it takes crazy to fight crazy. If I saw people were using a platform to hurt others, I acted. If I saw people abusing a system or manipulating it while acting like they were doing nothing wrong, or in some warped way felt justified for how they acted, I couldn't stop. I just couldn't, especially with how I was raised. It was triggering. If people carefully crafted their content so as to bury manipulation and corruption under it, so as to proceed undetected, I couldn't stay quiet. Nope. Now, the channel itself, A Fury the Film Fan, it started off as some kind of joke, but eventually it became a very therapeutic journey in self discovery. But honestly, the best times that I had on the platform was sharing my views on the most touching films that spoke to me in very specific ways. Sharing that information and hearing what others had to say and their own connections with what I saw. And together, coming to share in a very human understanding of an art, if that makes sense. It was a great time to be on the platform. At its inception, a platform still growing and finding itself. And we were in uncharted territory, man, reaching people in ways it never did before, and with a speed that professional publications could not catch up to. It was many times a rewarding experience, being able to not just share opinions and information, but build on a community that found the benefits of being film fans. Not just if a movie was quote unquote good or not, or if you really liked the cinematography. It was what we could get out of the experience, the messages, the overall lessons we would all benefit from by sharing our different views on a particular subject. This was mostly the experience, until it wasn't. And like any other environment, things can go toxic, which is what ultimately made me leave YouTube. Yes, I had some really bad underlying health issues. This is something that I've shared in my previous videos of why I left YouTube. And I also shared that I struggled with the amount of time that this platform demanded from my personal life, being that I wanted to just spend time with my son that was growing up so quickly. I'd rather spend time with him than go to some early screening for some movie that was terrible. Well, one of the things that I didn't share before was that it was also the community that I grew tired of. A community that had a penchant for being often fickle and aggressive. I found less and less people to share positive opinions with, and more people wishing that I was dead. You know, back then I had undiagnosed depression. I didn't know what I was struggling with. I didn't know the mental illness that I was struggling with. And eventually, I had a really, really tough time with that mental illness and dealing with my own suicidal thoughts. Oh, I'm better now. Much better. But coming back to this platform is never easy for me. I do not like the publicity. I do not like the comments. I also don't like the pushback and responses that I get from the most obsessive fans of the people that I'm talking about. But sometimes I just can't help it. I can't. And this is what has brought me back again now for my review of Chris Stuckman's Shelby OAKS. Because there's a lot to unpack here. A lot. To understand the final product is to understand the journey to it. To find meaning in something, you have to see the pattern. Most movie reviews focus on what's on the screen. Acting, pacing, lighting choices. But every story is shaped long before the camera rolls. A film is the echo of the person who made it. And sometimes, the echo tells us more than the film ever could. An obvious statement is that many of the things that we love reflect our inner worlds, our wounds, our hopes, our unresolved questions, our longing for meaning. And every now and then, a film comes along that forces us to step back and ask a different question. I encourage you to explore this, and if you're still here, I welcome you. I want to highlight first that this is not an attack. This is not gossip. This is not a video made with malicious intent, but a way to understand the bigger pattern behind creation and its collapse. Shelby Oaks is one of those films. It sits at the intersection of ambition, identity, and consequence. It's the result of over a decade of dreaming, but it's also the result of something far more fragile. A man trying to find himself through his own story. I'm going to talk about the film, but more importantly, I'm going to talk about the journey. The journey behind it is a journey that I have witnessed up close. It's a journey that has lessons for all of us, no matter who we are, whether we create movies or simply enjoy them. And this may sound like judgment to many, but it's not. It's understanding. Because when a person loses their story, their creations fall apart with them. So think of this lecture as a moment to look deeper and to see what happens when a storyteller builds a dream before building themselves. Shelby Oaks, a supernatural horror mystery written and directed by Chris Stuckman. While Stuckman's wife, Sam, is also credited for writing the story, the name Stuckman is what you will see on every poster. A Chris Stuckman film sits on top of the title that sounds more like a nursing home you go to when life didn't exactly go as planned. The first indicator of the vanity behind this project. Chris Stuckman has referred to himself as a director for a long time before Shelby Oaks was finished. I still remember the evening Stuckman eagerly showed me his home videos at my small New York apartment. His movies imitating Indiana Jones or Michael Jackson. And he sat there intently, waiting to see our reactions for his favorite moments. We grinned and smiled, giving the same, "Oh, wow, way to go, buddy," you would give your toddler who screams, "Look what I could do," while they proceed to do the most unimpressive display of athleticism. I believe I was the first person to tell him his work was not good, but more on that later. Over the span of 20 years, Stuckman continued to work on numerous projects that you can find on IMDb as part of his resume. In fact, the very Indiana Jones home movie he showed me in that small New York apartment is credited as a piece of work on IMDb. Now, I'm not sure how posting a home movie imitating a copyrighted character to an online database is considered acceptable for the site. It does mean that I missed my own chance of calling myself a director all this time if I only uploaded all my Disney vacations I filmed over the years. Darn. Imitation is something that Stuckman would proceed to apply to his short films, which include Auditorium 6, which nobody has seen but is credited on IMDb, Notes from Melanie, and my personal favorite, Julia, where imitation crossed the line into flat-out plagiarism as Stuckman pulled a Tarantino and cast himself as a character directly ripping off Ryan Gosling's iconic character in Drive, which would be fine if it was just a home movie or a parody, both of which were not, since Stuckman credits himself as the talent and was in fact not playing around. And so the grift continued, expanding a resume using quotes from James Cameron and Stanley Kubrick to justify the zealousy. But the idea of just taking a camera and shooting something was not meant to be taken literally. It implied the idea that if you truly loved something, keep working at it and tell a story and improve your craft, and you'll eventually reach your goal. Shelby Oaks was going to be just that. The project was meant to prove to everyone that he had stepped beyond online reviewing and into a new creative life. It was very apparent that his decision to stop reviewing films he didn't like was to not burn potential bridges as he worked toward this new endeavor. True change of heart would have meant that Stuckman would have removed all videos that he spoke poorly of, the numerous films that helped build his subscriber base, and helped build his success, and helped build him the support that he got for Shelby Oaks. Oddly enough, those videos remained. Only future content was affected and filtered. A bit hypocritical to take a new moral high ground while leaving the old content that you are now against. I don't know. Maybe that's just me and my standard. I think it sends a confusing message. If your new stance conflicts with an old stance, why would an old stance remain? Someone who is only partially sorry for what they've done, there's a word for that, and it's called disingenuous. That's a word that would be frequently used by those who are paying close attention to this shift in his channel. A shift that seemed to be tied very closely with this new endeavor. Now, wrap this all together, guys, and that's what's called an agenda. Stuckman's journey for Shelby Oaks began all the way back in 2016. It was then Stuckman first announced he was working on it. Over time, the project grew from a small personal idea into a community-backed dream, fueled heavily by his audience. One major turning point was the Kickstarter campaign, which became one of the most successful crowdfunding efforts for a horror film. The community rallied behind him, raising a substantial amount of money, far beyond the initial goals. A truly impressive feat. Stuckman had succeeded in connecting with an audience many others had struggled to do. Some even starting at the same time as he did on YouTube. Some even having more connections than him and pumping out more professional looking brand with podcasts and events that invited well-known actors for interviews. But it didn't seem to help. And Stuckman was the one that kept growing because he was just a guy and people connected with that. People saw something innocent, kind, and sincere. And because people genuinely believed in him, they wanted to see him succeed. A lot of that support came from the deep personal connection many fans felt with him after his vulnerable video where he discussed his past experiences with Jehovah's Witnesses and publicly came out as pansexual. That honesty made audiences feel like they truly knew him, like they weren't just supporting a filmmaker, they were supporting someone who had survived something and was finally becoming who he wanted to be. As the years passed, the film developed almost a mythic presence online. Reviewers, horror fans, longtime subscribers, they all shared in the hype. Hype that drew the attention of something far more sinister. But we'll get to that later. I was one of the fans that felt connected to him. I was one of them. I saw something in Stuckman that I thought I connected with, having also grown up as Jehovah's Witness. I immediately sensed the inner turmoil that he was silently enduring. My father was an elder. My mother, a regular pioneer. That meant that I was born into an inner circle of pressure and responsibility that a lot of people don't know about. That means I was born into an inner circle. That inner circle carried a level of responsibility. And that responsibility came with a level of pressure that many people don't know about. It's hard to explain, but with my father's title being so high, literally all eyes were on me and my behavior. And I was just a kid. That pressure really fucked me up. And I didn't know it did until much, much later. The pressure was there to not mess up. Everything I did was judged. Every decision scrutinized. Every single moment of my life was met with someone telling me, your best is not good enough. My mother was a preacher who spent all her life going door to door and trying to help people learn about Jehovah. And that defined her. She was a stay-at-home mother, and because of the amount of time that she was home, observed every single thing that I did. Who I spoke to, who I associated with, how I dressed, what I said. It was a level of control that I would later define upon realization. And I could be angry with them. In fact, there was many years there that I was. I could blame the religion for influencing them, but ultimately they were the ones that made that decision to be under that condition. They never sought change. They were comfortable with it. They didn't think about things until later when it was time to grow. Now, I could go on and on for hours with what that experience was like, what it did to me, what I did to claw out of it. So I do understand when people share what they experienced under that religion. In fact, that experience led me to hate religion in general. It led me to hate control. It led me to hate judgment. And I spent many, many years working on myself to fill in the gaps, to understand the trauma, and to find ways to heal. My anger led me into often dangerous paths, volatile environments, risky behavior, and near-death situations. Yeah, I was self-destructive. I was reckless, and I was confused. I was also alone, surrounded by people who thought they knew me, living a lie under a mask, afraid to be myself for fear of hating my true self upon discovery. As I got older, as I matured, I would empathize and understand what motivates people to flock toward a religion. While I personally stand heavily against it, I also understand what is missing from people and what a belief system provides. I have gone my whole life believing in people, not in the systems that aim to control them or to warp their thinking. So yeah, I was the first to tell Chris Stuckman to leave that religion and focus on himself. Something he would later throw in my face as part of the reason he cut me off. He called me bad association. I didn't fault him. Look, growing up in that environment, indoctrinated beliefs pushed upon you, and judgment, that environment stunts you emotionally. Many religions do this, not just Jehovah's Witnesses. I was also one of the first ones to tell Chris Stuckman that his work was bad. We gave him advice on how to improve his craft, and he was offended with the honesty. I would later be told by many who have worked with him that this was a behavior that was often repeated. Some conversations don't merit the unsolicited advice. I get it. But if that individual you are speaking with continues to speak on a subject and does not invite input, then that's being preached to. You're not going to come into my house and just preach to me about your goals and not invite me to add something to the conversation. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. If we're not engaging and sharing in opinions, then what are we doing here? So after being cut off, yeah, there was some anger there and some frustration. Nobody wants to be blamed for doing something they did not do. And most of you do not want to be blamed for something without being given the opportunity to defend yourselves. But whatever. Couldn't fault him for going through a process at that age and trying to figure it out for himself. But yeah, the anger was there, some frustration, and in the end, a pattern became clear when he also ended another public friendship the very same way. The pattern was there. To which I want to take a moment and say to the person who was also affected by this individual and left hurt and confused. You were not the problem. You did nothing wrong. Many times people who have not processed traumatic events project, and the people closest to them get hurt. It's often self-destructive. And while it's natural to feel hurt, resentful, taken advantage of, in the end, you cannot allow this person to make you feel like you were the problem. This is on them, not you. And find comfort in this message, knowing that your best is now reserved for someone who will appreciate it, while the other individual, they're left to struggle to replace what they lost. Chris was one of the first in a group of movie critics that I had assembled, which included Tom Chattelbash, Jeremy Johns, Christian Harloff, and a few others. The purpose of this group was to celebrate film, to create a community of people who loved film as much as we did. Man, seeing Jeremy Jahns and Chris Stuckman soar was amazing. As much as I disliked Stuckman personally, I could not help but admire the inspiration that they fed a community. They were doing what I had dreamed of. Their presence online encouraging would-be future filmmakers and content creators. Man, it's great. It motivated people to tell their story. They created a space for people to talk about what they loved, share ideas, and it was everything that I had imagined. It was truly great to see. But there is a downside to being in this environment so successfully. And that's what we're going to discuss next. Through observable fact, it is very clear to see that there has been a major shift on Chris Stuckman's channel. Arguably, you could say that it all started when he made his video deciding not to review Madame Web, but it started even before that. His fixation on filmmaking was taking over his channel, a channel that was dedicated to movie reviews. I mean, that's what his subscribers subscribe to, right? They subscribe to a channel dedicated to movie reviews, and at some point the channel shifted. That's a bit unfair for those who subscribed. Why not just make a new channel? It's not the audience's responsibility to adjust. It's really not fair. The audience, the fans, they committed to something. They believed in something. And now they're expected to believe in something else? Now, some may say, bro, it's not that deep. But I mean, the basis of this can be applied to anything. Anything that you've committed to and believe in, and then all of a sudden there's a shift, and you're the one expected to adjust. And what's even sadder are those who tell you that your feelings are not valid and that adjusting shouldn't be a big deal. But we're going to stick with this example for this story. Every video that Chris Stuckman uploaded implemented some form or idea that being a filmmaker was his goal, which it's fine. It's good to have goals. But it became a highlight for every video. He always found a way to bring it back to himself. I grew up with ... When I directed ... I am a filmmaker ... His reviews had less and less input and more self-serving influence. It's like he found a way to boomerang information back to himself. His content became egocentric. He was hyper-fixated on being a director. Not being in the industry, being a director. And I try to empathize here. If he had stories to tell, if he had this creative outlet that he just needed to share with the world, and we were seeing hints of that, then I could understand. But the evidence is there. He was more fixated with the idea of being a director than what the role of a director is. And following along that process, he forgot what it meant to be a viewer. It became more and more about how he felt a film could apply to his own journey, as opposed to who would enjoy this film. This major shift to stop reviewing quote-unquote bad movies defeats the entire purpose of being a movie critic. That toxic positivity is a cop-out, a coward's way of keeping your brand it was founded on while trying to convince your audience your stance is connected to some interpersonal higher morality. Did we forget that film is subjective? If you don't have the ability to share your thoughts on something you don't like without offending, then maybe you're not qualified to share an opinion in the first place. In addition, choosing to only review movies you prefer, it begs to question the authenticity of your opinion. Is it an opinion the audience can even trust? Is it bought and paid for? Imagine a world in journalism where only articles that lean in a specific side, what that can do to an audience. I mean, the results would be disastrous. It was very clear that Stuckman lost sight to what the goal was here, what the purpose of being a film critic was, and the role of a film critic. Nobody was asking him to do a complete dissemination of a product. Nobody was asking for an exaggerated drill down of film quality, insulting filmmakers and their journey. Nobody was asking for that. A film critic can be objective. They can share themselves in the review, provide their own life experience, and talk about film and whether it registered with them or not. To decide not to review what he would call a bad film is almost as if saying, I'm too scared to share what I feel because what I feel might hinder my own professional goals in the future. By taking this stance, it really brings to question a person's integrity. How can we trust what a person thinks if they're going to not tell us what they think? This can be defined as toxic positivity. It can also be defined as being disingenuous. But in the end, it's just really hard to trust someone who doesn't trust you to understand what they're saying. If they're not giving you the full truth, the trust just is not there. There are ways that you can talk about something that you don't like without being offensive. If a person hasn't figured that out, then they have no business calling themselves a film critic. They have no business being on a platform that influences others. Or maybe they just never had the right to call themselves a film critic in the first place. Me, personally, I've always felt that a film critic has a responsibility to the general public. It is journalism. It's what my approach was when I entered film criticism. A paying customer has every right to hear as much information about a product to make an informed decision. When money is involved, that is absolutely necessary. Otherwise, everything is just shilling, everything is leaned, everything is fake. There's mistrust, dishonesty, and in the end, nothing out there can be trusted. Regardless of my personal feelings about his decision where he wanted to take his channel to a different direction, the numbers have shown what other people feel. The fans have pulled back. They have turned on Stuckman. And in the end, the channel is on life support. There is no longer a sincere identity. Stuckman implements ads within ads in his videos to the point where people don't even know who they're listening to any longer. And I'm left wondering, well, what took you guys so long? The signs were always there. There was never any engagement with you guys. There was never any real window into this person's life. How can you trust a voice when you don't even know where it's coming from? From what I observe online, what many people have shared with me, nobody's trying to stop him from reaching his goals. They were just asking for him to pick a lane. You can't do both. We understand that sometimes your role as a provider is to be the moneymaker. But if you're still struggling to do this, and there's no other way but for you to put yourself in this position, then maybe it's not the right position to be in. And at this stage in the game, because we're talking about many, many years, there is a lot of time dedicated to this channel. If it's still not going right, then I think the problem is you're just refusing to listen. And by not listening, this all falls on you. By not listening to his fans of the channel, by not listening to professionals that have worked with you, by not listening to people that used to be your friends, this is on you. And now the entire empire that you've created, that you've spent over 20 years creating, is now headed to collapse. All because you refuse to listen. Now some may say, hey, there's setbacks and there's that toxic positivity again. Like, hey, it's all part of the game. You just got to keep going, keep pushing. You'll get your break one day. 20 years. 20 years. I cannot imagine what that must feel like to devote myself to something. Is it a goal anymore? Or is it something that you've just devoted so much into it that you've lost yourself in it? This idea of being a filmmaker became such an obsession that he felt it was more important to be a director than to understand the process of directing. He became obsessed with making film more than understanding why you would make a film and who it was for in the first place. What story do you have to tell? If you love this industry so much, you understand that this industry provides escapism. It provides relief. It provides hope. It provides imagination. It is an art. And what does art do? It inspires. It builds up. Instead of focusing on these tenets, this core belief of what this product is, no, Stuckman became more obsessed with the idea of this title. Now, fans would notice that his reviews held no passion for a long time. So I feel I need to highlight again that this is not just me being bitter, as they would say. This is what's been observed. That the fans noticed that a lot of his content held no passion, had no insight. A lot of his reviews, the quality has lowered, and a lot of times, a lot of the input sounds like AI summaries of films that could be found online anywhere. Nothing he's providing is unique or special. Nothing says this is coming from him. And many believe that, a lot of this is because he's just so wrapped up with this endeavor of his of being a director. And I know this is sounding redundant. I feel like it sounds like I'm repeating the same thing over and over and over again, but this is intentional because the next section of this video is the review. And by focusing so much on this obsession of being director, what I wanted you all to see is that there's a pattern here. And that pattern has translated to his final product, which is Shelby OAKS. Fury of the Film Fan here with my review for Shelby OAKS. Written and directed by Chris Stuckman. So I wanted to provide the most unbiased review I could possibly provide, despite my disdain for the director. I wanted to give the film a chance and let it speak for itself. So I turned off all the lights, put my phone away, and took out my pen and pad and started taking notes. Activate classic critic mode. No distractions. Just me and 142 minutes of wait a minute. It says online the actual film is 119 minutes long. Alright, let's get right into it. Before watching the movie, I checked out the trailer, and I ran through a summary of the film. Shelby OAKS is a supernatural thriller about a woman investigating the disappearance of her sister, who was part of this paranormal investigation group known as the Paranormal Paranoids? What kind of name is that? Might as well call themselves the Spooky Sentimentals. Well, that's a name for a real YouTube channel from the mid-2000s, not made up for this film, but used as the backdrop for the film's story. Shelby OAKS takes this mystery of the group's disappearance and uses it as the foundation for its horror mystery. Riley was one of the members of this paranormal paranoids that disappeared. Riley's sister Mia has been endlessly searching for her sisters. She retraces her sister's final steps, discovers old footage, and revisits locations tied to the missing group's activities. The film blends found footage elements with traditional narrative scenes, focusing on the mystery surrounding the group's disappearance and the psychological toll it takes on the main character. Or at least that's what it tries to do. In the very first minute of this film, I thought I was watching another VHS movie. Not the actual videotape, the technology. I'm talking about the found footage horror anthology VHS. The first installment was directed by Brad Miska in 2012. He really managed to create something unique with a found footage genre. The anthology method worked well with the film because not only was it genuinely super effective horror, it had different director styles coming together. Probably something Stuckman should have debuted with rather than push for a feature length film. In fact, for how much Shelby Oaks cost, you could have made 4 VHS movies. That is, if it was in the hands of someone who knew what they were doing. Just to continue with the comparison here, VHS budget was around $250,000, where Shelby Oaks cost around $2.8 million to make. Where did that money go? Shelby Oaks' story itself could have been condensed into a 25-minute VHS short, and nothing in Shelby Oaks screams high-quality production, other than a few well-shot scenes from the film's cinematographer, Andrew Baird. Good job, Andrew. Inspired by is a term that was used a lot to describe this film in other reviews. Right now, the fact that Stuckman's movie feels like someone else's movie in the very first minute, it's not a good start. Found footage requires a little more than a static transition to be effective. It's hard to get it right, but when it works well. Films like Wreck, Blair Witch Project, Paranormal Activity, Creep, Late Night with the Devil, Strange Harvest, and of course VHS, they all pulled it off. So the idea of doing something new isn't really called for, you just need to do it right. The first 5 minutes of Shelby Oaks shows you how to do it wrong. We're introduced to Riley through found footage. I felt like I was watching a video game cutscene from the early 90s. Something straight out of Night Trap from the Sega CD. The tension stretches too long. The character stupidly lingering. Look, I get that having a frustrating character is somewhat of a norm in a horror movie, a trope. Have these characters react idiotically to their horror environment. A character hears a loud sound and then does the opposite of what the audience would do. Movies like Scream, Tucker and Dale vs. Evil, and Cabin in the Woods did an excellent job of highlighting the cliche and showing how horror often relies on this as a way to pull audiences in. It works when a horror movie isn't shooting for Oscars and stays comfortable in its campiness. But Shelby Oaks isn't campy. It's taken itself very seriously. So Riley is screaming and crying into a camera. She hears loud noises and banging just outside her door. And I'm ready to walk out of my own door as this scene painfully plays out. There's a lot of dead air here as Stuckman tries to build up tension for this character that we just met. This attempt at controlled tension is going to be repeated often throughout Shelby Oaks. And Stuckman's going to make the same mistake over and over. 6 minutes in, and we're introduced to the group that makes up the paranoid paranormals. We never get to know them. The writing never does a good job of helping us, the audience, get to know who these individuals are. I understand that we're not meant to care for them, but the situation calls for this group to be slightly more than just background actors. In more found footage, we see them enter an abandoned facility, and it's here that Stuckman attempts his very first scare. If you know Stuckman, you know how he's grown up with M. Night Shyamalan's Signs, and how much it means to him. Stuckman's first jump scare imitates the iconic moment in Signs where the alien is revealed for the first time, almost shot for shot. Whereas M. Night's scene was highly effective due to its build-up, Stuckman's scene falls flat, as we're shown a group of people we don't know and a sudden shot of some creature we don't know play out for some generic jump scare moment that really only the most skittish, startle-prone individuals will appreciate. Stuckman's directing style is derivative. He's not drawing inspiration, he's recycling ideas and copying from other films without understanding the emotional depth needed. This intro should be where Stuckman shows us something unique, something that says, hey, I'm ready for the big leagues. But instead of finding his own voice, he stitches together familiar tropes, resulting in a film that feels assembled rather than created. Something that feels more like a fan film of horror rather than a horror film. The first 17 minutes of Shelby Oaks is nothing but exposition, disguised as an interview. It's such a cop-out. The character Mia tells us, the audience, what to feel rather than showing us. It's a patronizing start that removes all mystery and tension. The intention may have been to slowly introduce us to this world of Shelby Oaks, but instead we're introduced to scene after scene telling us what we should feel. Then we are given a scene that aims to shift the tone of the film. Mia opens the door to a man who shoots himself. This is not a spoiler because it's literally the first thing you see in the trailer. It's how the trailer starts. It's a scene that would have been better served away from the trailer. It's a moment that could have been Stuckman's first display of effective storytelling. Perhaps he'll make a future video detailing how studios ruin films when they put out trailers. Most of the time, a movie has enough going for it that it can afford sacrificing a moment, but Shelby Oaks' margins are razor thin, and would have benefited slightly by keeping this scene in its back pocket. Now let's talk about this scene for a bit. Camille Sullivan, who plays Mia, does a good job working with what she can work with, and she did a great job of reacting sincerely shocked in this scene. What happens next goes down as one of the biggest blunders in a horror film. The character Mia never cleans her face from the blood splattered on her. Just an entire day goes by. Husband ignores it, EMS and police never address it, just leave some stranger's blood on her face. Perhaps Stuckman's intention was to show someone so distraught and so fixated on the tape that the person left behind that they couldn't think of anything else, including the blood on her face. And this tells me two things. One, Stuckman does not have the keen eye for attention to detail as he claims to have in his reviews. And two, Stuckman wrote a scene without understanding how humans behave. Seeing Mia slowly walk around her house tells me it's a combination of both. She's moving around her house as if she's moving around it for the very first time. It doesn't feel natural. She's not moving like you sense that she's really reacting to the environment or the story around her. She's just reacting to a scene that's been written out. She's acting out a scene that played out better in Stuckman's head. This is one of the major problems with Shelby Oaks. Stuckman wrote this movie scene by scene. There's no cohesiveness to it. There's no glue that sticks it all together. This film feels cold. It feels unnatural. It feels artificial. It feels like it lacks a personality. Camille Sullivan's character was written this way as well. Her character only showing two emotions. There's no ambiguity here. There's no nuance. She's a robot on a mission. How anybody can find this interesting, appealing, or captivating is beyond me. I question the authenticity of any person who gave this movie a glowing review or called it the quote-unquote scariest movie ever. They're either a shill or get excited when keys jingle. Look, I understand that opinions are opinions, but stuff that's being claimed for this movie is just not there at all. Cohesion just isn't there. The character decisions don't make sense. The scares don't land because they feel disconnected. The mystery itself is all over the place. Shelby Oaks is a film from a student who doesn't want to take the class. The only thing that does work is the cinematography. The film looks like a film. That credit should go where credit should go, to the cinematographer, not the director, because it's here that the cinematographer brings his skill and talent into the film. So, Andrew Scott Baird, credit goes to you, sir, for doing the only thing that works in this film. Because what comes afterwards feels like the entire thing was redubbed, trying to make a movie on top of someone else's work. And that's the pattern here. Every scene feels like something from a movie you have already seen. The story feels like a story you've already heard. Everything in Shelby Oaks feels fake. Now, you can see the actors are genuinely struggling to try to take whatever this script is and try to make it work so it doesn't feel this way. You can see them trying their best to put themselves into it and try to elevate these characters, but with nothing there, it just feels like it's their first improv. I questioned before, where did the money go into making this film? Yeah, you have Keith David and Michael Beach who are in this film so briefly, I wonder why they were cast. Was the production company from Aaron Kuhn's intention to expand their resume by working with talent? Or is Stuckman so incapable of directing he couldn't capitalize on a legend like Keith David? I mean, come on! It's like having Jordan in your kid's basketball team and only putting him in for the first 2 minutes of the first half. Well, congrats, backers. You helped pay for Keith David's rent. The rest of this movie is padded. A narrative drag, trotting along with nothing interesting happening. The energy in this movie is non-existent. And even when Mia decides to venture off on her own, none of it is exciting. A glare from a dog here, a flash of an entity there, none of it connecting. I did laugh out loud when it was revealed that an Incubus was involved. Arguably the worst 90s band ever. Just the worst. God, I really hate that band. The conclusion to Shelby Oaks eventually collapses under the weight of its own delusions of grandeur. Mia meets up with this character at the end of the film. They have a back and forth, with the character revealing the obvious after denying the initial conversation. So it was just like, why did you say you didn't know about this, only for 5 minutes later to say that you do? The writing is horrendous. I don't know how people can sugarcoat this. Stuckman doesn't know how to write conversations. He doesn't know how to talk. He doesn't understand how people talk to each other. And this scene is showcases exactly that. Hey, Stuckman, right now on Udemy, there's a course on how to write awesome dialogue for fiction, film, and theater for $14.99. Please take it. So, Chris has shared that his experience as a Jehovah's Witness inspired him to write this movie. I cannot see that connection. I can't see it. And this is coming from someone who also is an ex-Jehovah's Witness, who's had his own considerable trauma. The connection claim feels forced. It almost feels like a way to sell something that really isn't there. An emotional manipulation of sorts. I bring that up because it's something that he consistently has brought up when promoting this film. There's no story in this movie. There's no depth to it. There's no vibe to it. And I would have loved to see that. I would have loved to see that story be translated into this film, but it's just not there. Instead, it feels like Stuckman shot the movie scene by scene. In the end, everything you saw doesn't matter. The journey was for nothing. That conclusion was bad. You should all be insulted, because this is what your director thinks you deserve. This is what the production company felt passed for horror. The bar is apparently so low for the genre that this is what passes for a theatrical run. This is what they think of you. And coming from a director that claims to not only love the genre but the art itself is the most unforgivable crime here. There's no apologizing for this. There's no goalpost moving. Apologists want to say, oh, he'll get better. But in the real world, where real money is involved, how many of us get to fail up? How many of us are given passes when we don't do the job? Guys, real money was spent. Real time was invested, and real choices were made. Accountability goes where it belongs. Whether Neon saw an opportunity to take advantage of a desperate filmmaker, or Stuckman was so disillusioned that he refused to listen to those around him when creating this, we are not responsible to sugarcoat a product being sold to us. I'm not here to review maybes. I'm not here to review dreams. I'm not here to review wishes. I don't care what happens next. I don't care if he improves. Or I don't even care if he makes another film again. I don't care. What I do care is what I've just watched. And what I've just watched was a complete waste of my time and my life. And the fact that so much time was spent to create that experience, that so much time was put into a product that didn't provide me anything, instead took away from me and took away from my life and my time and my money, that makes it one of the most offensive films I've ever seen. When I first started YouTube, one of the first movies that I reviewed that went viral was a comedy called Meet the Spartans. It's a really bad comedy. In fact, don't even call it a comedy. Meet the Spartans was an insult to comedy, and I was personally offended by this movie because of how lazy it was and how stupid it was, and how they try to pass it as a comedy. Shelby Oaks is the Meet the Spartans of horror. One of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. An insult to the genre. I have seen other reviews where I feel people were throwing very soft punches because This was Stuckman's first theatrical release. So what? Imagine how that would work in another business. Hey, doctor, it's okay you left that pen in that guy's heart. It's your first surgery. Or, hey, chef, it's alright. You poisoned half the restaurant. It's okay, man. It's your first dinner. Come on. Come on. Stuckman built his lifestyle on tearing down others. And now we're going to go with we can't criticize a critic? Get out of here, man. And I already hear the fans. I already see the comments. Oh, hey, let's see you do a movie. You're just jealous. All the movies try to do the same thing. They're just here for a profit. Listen to me. This garbage called Shelby Oaks doesn't even deserve to be in the bargain bin at the Walmart kiosk. I hated this movie. I really did. I wanted to be proven wrong. I love to be surprised. I love to be proven wrong. I do. But the fact is that there's just nothing going on with this movie. And I do question those who glazed over this film and gave it such high reviews. I do question their authenticity. I do believe that they were paid for. I do believe that they were shilling. Because there's no way that anybody who loves the craft, who loves film, who understands what film is and understands what stories feel like, can say that this movie was anything other than pure garbage. And I'm repeating it because it bears repeating. Shelby Oaks' true horror lies in the cautionary tale behind its creation. It's a film that absolutely encapsulates the empty void that spawned it. Shelby Oaks gets the Fury of Film Fan Marcus Shane. This has been a Fury of the Film Fan review, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Alright, let's calm it down for a little bit. I gotta lower my blood pressure. Now we need to acknowledge the other force shaping Shelby Oaks, the industry itself, specifically Neon, the production company that bought the distribution rights. When Neon acquired the film, many assumed there was a sign of confidence, proof that the movie had real potential, but a pattern shows something very different. Neon wasn't investing in a vision, they were investing in a strategy. In the years before Shelby Oaks, Neon watched companies like A24 turn small-budget horror films into cultural phenomena. Films like Hereditary, The Witch, Talk to Me and Bring Her Back, they all exploded, not just because they were good, but because A24 and other companies built a system around momentum and carefully crafted hype. Neon got a taste of this with Longlegs and felt it could do it again and again. So, when Shelby Oaks crossed their desk, they didn't see a film rich with quality. They saw a marketing opportunity, a way to replicate an A24 model without investing the same level of quality development or risk. And here's how we know that. 1. The artificial hype. The movie's promotional materials, trailers, clips, featurettes, all that stuff, they saw sudden suspicious spikes in online engagement views. You could go on their YouTube channel and you can see these views. What, 7 million, 8 million views. But the comments, they didn't match the inflated views. Momentum appeared where genuine interest was minimum. The question isn't whether people were excited. The question is how much excitement was manufactured. 2. The box office. There's a contrast there. A24's breakout horror films, they earned tens of millions at the box office. Hereditary made over 80 million worldwide. The Witch made over 40 million. Shelby Oaks, despite Neon's aggressive marketing push, and all the theaters that it pushed it in, over 1,800, the film just did not perform well. So those numbers did not match the hype. It didn't translate into real turnout because the hype wasn't real. The movie even saw a huge drop-off the next week. That was once real word of mouth got out, once the real reviews came in. Come on. We saw the film. There's no way that executives saw this movie and saw a quality product. In fact, they put money into this movie to make it somewhat more watchable for the audience. The initial film was made with the Kickstarter money, came out about 1.2 million or whatever. Neon came in and pumped in about another 1 to 2 million into it to add scenes and gore. I didn't see anything that could have justified that cost. Those tariffs must be hitting hard. I understand it's a business, but there's ethics in business. Pushing a poor product to the masses, building a hype, paying for views and reviews, that's a corruption. And that's something I can't stay quiet about. Look, if you want to be a bootlicker, if you really think there's no issue here, then by all means continue to live in ignorance. I hear it's quite peaceful there. Me, I can't help it. I gotta comment on it. And I can already hear the defenders. Oh, you're just making all this up. Look, if I can make something like this up with all the observations and details, I should write movies because I'm a damn genius then. I can't make all this up. You're choosing to ignore what's being presented. That's on you. If you're okay giving your money without question to others, you deserve to be in the position that you're in. But that's not my standard. It frustrates me to no end when I see an uneven playing field. When I see people take a shortcut or cut through a course that others are also on, and they don't get the opportunities that this other person gets because the game isn't played, I can't settle for that. There's people that are also working hard for their dreams and also have goals, who are putting in the work. That little corrupt game that you guys are ignoring, that affects people and it holds them back. So while you're celebrating the success of this person, you're also hurting the other people. In my opinion, Neon saw something that they could exploit. A director with a built-in fan base, a YouTube following that they could mine, and a creator desperate to make his dream real. A project that had some emotional baggage to it that they could commodify, and a marketing angle built on a story behind the movie, not the movie itself. Neon wasn't backing art here. They were backing attention. It was a strategy. And the reviews, my God, what a disgusting display of shilling. There are so many examples online of obvious paid reviews. The early reviews, the very first ones, they were glowing. You look up some of these critics on Rotten Tomatoes that put in these early reviews, they don't even mention the obvious issues that we all saw. These same critics can be seen socializing with Stuckman, hamming it up, man. You guys ever heard the term conflict of interest in journalism? Let me explain. Conflict of interest in journalism occurs when a reporter's personal, financial, or professional interests clash with their duty to provide unbiased, objective news, potentially leading to biased coverage and eroding public trust. Common conflicts involve financial stakes in covered companies, personal relationships with sources, accepting gifts, freebies, political affiliations. That's all there. You look it up. There's a critic, one of the first ones on Rotten Tomatoes. Her name is B.J. Colangelo. Was one of the first critics who issued a review on Rotten Tomatoes that shot up that aggregator up to fresh. That's something that people pay close attention to when it comes to a film's quality, especially early on. And she can also be seen hanging out with Stuckman socially on her Instagram. It's there. It's public. All right, I didn't go creeping around. It's out there. Now, based on the description of the term of what a conflict of interest in journalism is, you tell me. What's going on here? I'm sure some of y'all will have an excuse or chalk it up to, well, it's just an opinion. You're missing the pattern here. Deadline journalist Andreas Weissman, he wrote 6 articles boasting about Stuckman's trajectory with Shelby Oaks. Nobody else was writing about Stuckman's journey at this point, yet this man was consistently putting out article after article in as many places online as he could. I reached out to him and I asked him, are you a backer for Stuckman's film? No comment. When I asked him if he knew Chris Stuckman personally, if he had a friendship or a relationship with him at any point, no comment. I don't like being ignored. I don't. So I reached out to Andreas Weissman's bosses, the ones who ran Deadline. They also had no comment. That's interesting. And it's also a bit telling. Bro, if you don't know the guy, just tell me you don't know him. Case closed. No comment, huh? A lot of small, very small channels were given opportunities here to review Shelby Oaks early and have their quotes used as part of the promotions, but only the ones that had something very good to say. One channel in particular got to have their quote in the trailer, and that's the quote right there. Really? Really? Come on now. It's just embarrassing at this point. The shilling was there. The manipulation was there. Even from Chris Stuckman himself, who released a video begging people to see his movie. He once again brought up his struggled past with his religion, something he brought up in almost every interview he did for this movie. And it crossed into emotional manipulation. Now you might say, well, Fury, it's his story. He can talk about his story if he wants to. Sure, yes. But it becomes emotional manipulation when the trauma is repeatedly emphasized to generate sympathy, deflect criticism, or create an artificial emotional weight to the project. That's the definition of emotional manipulation. The experience was used to sell the movie. Again, I didn't see how it connected. I didn't see how the experience connected to the film, and this is someone who deeply understands exactly what that situation looks and feels like. Didn't see it. Had this been a movie that closely resembled or even was related to the experience of being under an oppressive controlling system, then I would be wrong. Yeah, but I'm not. It leads me to see how Neon controlled Stuckman in this situation. I have never seen a director do more promotion for his own movie. The amount of interviews and the amount of press that Stuckman did was insane. Putting Stuckman front and center to promote his own film was a calculated move. They let Stuckman be the face of the film, take all the risk and all the blame, while Neon sat back looking like the good guys promoting the indie sector. And this wasn't empowerment, it was insulation. If the film failed, he was the guy that took the blame, and if the film succeeded, Neon was the one that took the profit. It wasn't a partnership, it was strategy. I do believe that Neon took advantage of Chris's obsession. Stuckman spent more than 18 years chasing film. It defined him, it consumed him, it became the identity that he clung onto. And Neon milked that obsession for every drop of every promotional value. They knew the quality, they knew the limitations, they knew the film would struggle, but they also knew that the man behind it was desperate enough to carry the entire machine on his back. This is a cautionary tale, because this is what happens when a person without meaning meets an industry without mercy. A man without a story is easy to control. A dream without purpose is easy to sell. So this chapter isn't about blame, it's about understanding the pattern. You can't blame Stuckman for trying. You can't blame Neon for the strategy. You can't blame the small channels for playing the game. And you can't help the production companies for wanting to capitalize on the rare situation to grow. But you can absolutely notice the patterns here. You can see that Stuckman removed himself from a system of control only to enter another one. See, I get how Stuckman was trying to implement his past experience with the Jehovah's Witnesses as inspiration. I shared with you all. I get it. And he was the one who continuously brought that issue up when pushing this film. So, following on that, let's explore it a little deeper, because the end product does not reflect his personal experience. I never felt that inspiration. I never felt that he had that story to tell. In fact, it was quite the opposite. What we were presented with in Shelby Oaks was a shell of a story, a veneer, a mask. It was as if the director was showing what he thought would pass, and there was just no honesty to it. It's like a cook following someone else's recipe. There's no passion, no honesty. Again, I'm not trying to dismiss his story. Having come from that situation, I believe it's important to be honest and talk about it. But Shelby Oaks did not reflect that situation that he continuously brings up. Watching Shelby Oaks, it told me that the director had no vision. It told me that he never confronted his unresolved wounds, that he never fixed his religious trauma, that there's still confusion about who he is, and that this idea of filmmaking are just attempts to escape one identity by creating another. And ultimately, because of his obsession to be a filmmaker, he fell into the industry's control. The very control that he fought so hard to claw out of. You might be saying, look, we're all under some form of control. Yes. But I don't create art. I don't create art when I'm at work. Nothing in Shelby Oaks speaks art. Had there been something there, had there been something in Mia's character, the rest of the issues could be excused. Now, we could review a reviewer, we can criticize a critic, and based on his content alone, I don't see any life experience in the videos that he presents. None of them. There's no life experience in any of the reviews. There's there's no truth to his art. His videos lack any depth. His stories never have truth in it, real truth. And Shelby Oaks feels empty because it was created from emptiness. We can also talk about the detachment from community, where he stopped engaging with fans. He's living in isolation. He's living in a world created for himself, not the real world. And legacy cannot be forced in a vacuum, because a man without purpose is easily controlled. Controlled by the industry, controlled by fear, controlled by expectations, and controlled by his own unresolved story. There's a lot of lessons that we can get from this entire project, but I think that's the ultimate takeaway from Shelby Oaks and what it is. There's a story there, just not the one that Stuckman told. A story without meaning collapses. And Shelby Oaks is a story built on confusion, not clarity. Another lesson. When you ignore your story, the people that are seeking to control you, they're going to write it for you. He never approached Shelby Oaks with any honesty, and I think this is like the fourth time that I've mentioned that word. He never approached it with the goal to tell a real story to the audience. Ultimately, Chris Stuckman made a movie for himself, not the viewers. Something that I was shown when a few individuals that worked with Stuckman personally approached me privately and shared their experiences working with him professionally. They came to me, they told me what happened, sharing how off-putting he was and how he ignored advice. A familiar pattern. And I can see the comments again. Hey, where's the proof, bro? Where's the proof? Or who was it? Or give me names. I don't got to give you anything. Okay? You can choose to listen, and you can choose to ignore. It's up to you. There's no way that I can make this stuff up. But if this message is not for you, then so be it. But I am not going to name names. Purpose comes before creation. Over 18 years of effort, and it can't replace identity. All the years dedicated to making film, all the years dedicated to making this film, and for what? The end product is nothing but ultimately art without truth. And art without truth has no resonance. It has no lasting measure, no weight to it. It is forgettable. Just look at his recent comments and his recent views. The world is taking notice. Viewers can sense that Stuckman does not have a story to tell. I was hesitant to make this video based on my previous history with Chris Stuckman. Every single time I made a video with the goal to stop bad behavior or to kind of help people, I was met with harassment and attacks. I tried to help people who were affected, and I was met with opposition. I was met with insane fanboys that did not care how they attacked me. Every single time I've come back to YouTube, I'm met with the same fans. I'm met with the same attacks or the same excuses. At its worst, when I was on this platform, I was given death threats. They were made to me and my family from cowards hiding behind anonymous accounts. I would get emails mocking me and my family, insulting us in a very personal way. And these weren't just trolls. These are people who knew details about my family, and most people don't know those details. That was very difficult for me to deal with. It's one of the reasons why I removed myself from this YouTube, because I didn't want others to dictate what my story was going to be. This world, they'll love you 1 minute and they'll turn on you in a second. They love to dogpile on an issue, watching it burn. These people love to see things collapse. They love to see things destroyed. And when there's blood in the water, there's frenzy. And people jump on whatever issue and into that frenzy without thinking about anything that that person is going through on the other side of that computer. And I said, it's just not worth it. This environment, it's not worth it. Yeah, you're going to make a little bit of money here and there, but in the long run, you become a slave to a system. You become a slave to your channel. You become a slave to the opinion of others, just so that you can keep going. You become a puppet. Some might say, hey, that's not me. I'm just going to keep it smooth and be myself, but try to remove yourself from the channel that generates your income. Try to pull away from something that you've spent years and years and years building up, hundreds and thousands of hours into. It's really, really hard to claw out of. Almost familiar. So I was hesitant in making this video because I didn't want to give the appearance that I was some guy that didn't get over the past, that I was someone wishing the demise of another person. No, that's not the case here. I apologized a long time ago to the people that I wronged when I was a kid. I even had a conversation with Stuckman himself about 3 years ago. Here's how that went. So I was getting harassed again. I was getting these emails from a guy named Professor Otaku. I checked if it was actually him. It wasn't. But this guy had, I guess, spoofed an email or something, and he was calling himself Professor Otaku, and he reached out to me on my personal email and throwing insults my way that were very, very specific, that only a very small circle of people would have known to use these insults in this manner. Now, I felt that it was Chris. I felt that it was him using one of his fake accounts, since one of the insults was something that only he would have known when he stayed in my house. Also, with seeing how he behaved online when we were kind of hanging out, it felt familiar. And I felt it was him, and I demanded he speak with me. So I finally got his attention, and I had to do a few things to get that attention, but I got it. Now, I wanted to confront him and kind of squash all this, right? I wanted to squash it. So we spoke on the phone, and he said it wasn't him. He denied it, and in fact, he shared that in turn, he was also being harassed by someone claiming that it was me, and it wasn't. Like, if it was me, why would I deny it when I just said it was me? Like, it made no sense, right? Now, I didn't believe him, and I'm pretty sure he didn't believe me, but in the end, we left it like that. I said, look, good luck with your future, good luck with whatever you're doing in your life, and there was a respectful end to the conversation. But the point is that this environment is going to drive you crazy. He shared with me that he doesn't read the comments because it'll drive him crazy. And I empathize with that. I don't blame him for disconnecting from the environment. There's way too many people who aren't thinking about the person behind the computer, what they're going through. They cross from criticism into harassment. They cross from opinion into hate. And they cross right into cyberbullying. I just scrolled through some of the comments. Individuals commenting on Stuckman's personal appearance, calling him fat, as if that fucking matters. That doesn't matter to you. That's the same shit people did to me when I was online and I was struggling with my own weight issues and my own mental health, and it's happening again. And it's why I hate this platform. There's too much freedom, not enough accountability. Too much room for terrible behavior to go unchecked. Just go through the most recent comments against Stuckman. It is unbelievable how quick a community will turn on you. And let's be honest, Stuckman hasn't really done anything to merit that type of behavior. I mean, he's not a pedophile. He hasn't hurt anybody. He's just doing his thing, right? And so Stuckman really has the right to ignore the lot of you. I wish I saw this energy when it came to people that are hurting others and corrupt leaders with their knees on the neck of society. Nah. You pick and choose your fight. You project your angst in a form of cyberbullying against the person you expect not to retaliate because he needs you, right? So you think. So I did a little soul searching. I asked myself why. Why was this story with this guy that I had met so many years ago a constant? Why did I still find myself talking to individuals in his life, seeking me for validation, seeking me to share information about his life, seeking me to give me details that I didn't want to know. I didn't even ask for, but these people wanted to reach out to me and talk to me about him. So why? Why was this guy still in my life? I was trying to ignore it, try to just move forward. Why was he a constant? And so I started really analyzing this story. I took a step back and started seeing what this story looked like, what the pattern looked like over 18 years in the making. And when I saw Shelby Oaks, it finally clicked. Because for you guys, Shelby Oaks is just a horror movie. For me, it's a cautionary tale, and it's a story that needs to be told. As I stated before, having been very familiar with the conditions and situations of growing up in that, even more so than I care to share, when I saw the movie, I saw what was lacking from it, which was truth. So I'm going to repeat what I told Chris Stuckman in that White Castle that we hung out at 2 o'clock in the morning after we saw Mission Impossible in New York. I said to him, you need to figure out who you are before anything else. That you need to make sure that what you're doing is for yourself, and that everything you're doing moving forward is for yourself and for your story. And that's ultimately what I am taking away from this review, this video. I'm reflecting on what his story has taught me. But ultimately, his decision to stay in this environment, it falls on him. Everything that happens moving forward, that's on him. So if he's still clinging on to this world and the world's turning on him, that's everything is because he can't let go. This world will not bend to your needs. You fans are a product, and Stuckman has categorized you as such to make sense and justify the current output of content. You should feel insulted. The same way he's insulted. It's a circle, a pattern of behavior. Shelby Oaks was more than just a film experience. It encapsulated the entire journey. It's a reminder that meaning must be found. This was a story behind a story. I was able to find meaning in this story and in that director's journey. It's a warning. It's not something that should be viewed upon as something inspirational or celebrated. It's a warning that every person watching can fall into the same trap if you don't have a story with meaning, and a meaning that fits in your purpose. The true horror behind Shelby Oaks is the reminder that if we do not understand our story, we will spend our lives trying to tell a story that was never ours.